On December 4th, 2024 at 6:44 a.m., Brian Thompson, the former CEO of UnitedHealthcare, was shot and killed outside a Hilton hotel in Midtown Manhattan. His killer, a masked gunman, shot 3 times at Thompson from behind using one of these, a 3D printed pistol, or ghost gun. 5 days later, after a nationwide manhunt and media frenzy, Luigi Mangione was arrested at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. I'm Natasha Anderson, and today we're going to look at the key pieces of evidence that led to Mangione's arrest and charges in one of the most high-profile murder cases of the last century. This is Evidence Box. Before we start, it's important to note that Luigi Mangione has not been tried yet for the crimes he is accused of, and has pleaded not guilty to the murder charges he's been indicted on. No date has been fixed for his state trial in New York, which, if convicted, could see him face life in prison without possibility of parole. The separate charge in federal court carries a possible death penalty. Although no plea deal has been presented, and there is no indication that Mangione is considering accepting a deal, it is not out of the realm of possibility. This is the body camera footage of Mangione's arrest in that McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
Mark? Yes, sir. Mark what? Sorry. Someone called. They thought you were suspicious. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mangione had been on the run for 5 days following the point-blank murder when police in Altoona, Pennsylvania descended on a McDonald's and took him into custody. The arrest came just minutes after an unidentified manager of the fast food restaurant called 911 to report that some of the other customers had recognized Mangione's eyebrows as those of the suspected killer wanted in New York City. Officers arrived at the fast food restaurant just moments later and were seen in body camera footage approaching Mangione. One simply said, "Hey sir," to which Mangione cordially responded, "How you doing?" At that point, an officer asked Mangione to pull down his face mask. He quickly obliged, but when asked for his name, Mangione identified himself as Mark Rosario. The officer informed Mangione that someone had called 911 because they thought he looked suspicious. Mangione, stuttering his words, started to apologize.
Someone called. They thought you were suspicious. Oh, I'm sorry.
Another officer then asked him for his ID, called in the information from the New Jersey driver's license, and determined the details were fake. Police warned Mangione that if he provided them with a false name again, he would be arrested for false identification. So Mangione ultimately told him his real name. A fake ID, registered to New Jersey under the name Mark Rosario, was found on Mangione when he was arrested. This led to initial charges of forgery and false identification. Mangione used that same fake ID to check into a New York City hostel in the days leading up to the shooting. When he was apprehended in Altoona, he allegedly told police his name was Mark Rosario, with his lawyers now arguing that statement should be suppressed from the evidence because officers started asking questions before telling him he had a right to remain silent. Mangione using the fake ID is key to the case, as it allowed police to search his bag without a warrant. An officer during his arrest at McDonald's suggested getting a warrant to search the bag, but another argued a warrant wasn't needed because Mangione was already under arrest for allegedly possessing a fake ID. Mangione's attorneys, however, have argued the search was illegal and want it excluded from evidence in the trial. These are replicas of the Kind Bar wrapper and water bottle that police found near the crime scene. It is alleged that Mangione purchased them at a Starbucks right before the shooting. That rookie mistake provided investigators with the first scientific forensic evidence used against him. Police were able to match the fingerprints taken from Mangione in Pennsylvania to those on the water bottle found near the crime scene. Officers searched Mangione's backpack without a warrant, claiming they were justified to do so because they needed to ensure it did not contain dangerous items before seizing it. Because he was under arrest for the crime of false identification, police argued they had the jurisdiction to search his possessions and that Miranda warnings were not required. Inside the backpack were a 9mm handgun and a homemade silencer. There was also ammunition inscribed with the words delay, deny, and depose, and a journal in which Mangione allegedly mused about wanting to whack an insurance executive and wrote about rebelling against the deadly greed-fueled health insurance cartel. Court documents claim that police found more than $7,000 in US dollars and $16,000 in foreign currency in Mangione's backpack. Police also allegedly recovered a laptop, 11 handwritten notes, a US passport, a Maryland driver's license, a pocket knife, multiple USBs, and a Greyhound ticket from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh. The items in Mangione's backpack were crucial for linking him to the crime scene in New York, with the bullets being what convinced officers in Pennsylvania that he was the CEO killer. Mangione's pistol was a so-called ghost gun, a homemade weapon with no serial number created by assembling a mix of commercial and DIY parts. Experts believe the weapon had been 3D printed. Police used a ballistics report to confirm that the ghost gun found in his backpack was a match to the spent 9mm shell casings and bullets recovered from the sidewalk where Thompson was shot. Detectives also noted how its specific characteristics on the gun, such as its stippling pattern and its unserialized Glock features, mirrored those seen on the gun in the surveillance footage. The 3D printed silencer found in the bag was also consistent with the quiet nature of the deadly shooting. The bullets marked delay, deny, and depose seemingly suggested motive, or at the bare minimum, a reference to the healthcare industry. This is the surveillance footage of Brian Thompson's execution. Brian Thompson left his hotel in Manhattan at 6:44 on December 4th when a masked assailant drew out a gun with a silencer and shot him in the back. After Thompson stumbled away from his attacker, he was followed, with the shooter, alleged to be Mangione, continuing to fire into him as he hit the ground. The gunman fled the scene and escaped into Central Park on a bike. Witnesses said the shooter had been waiting for some time outside Thompson's hotel before the shooting and knew which door the healthcare CEO was going to emerge from before he opened fire. The gunman, who was later identified as Luigi Mangione, was also caught on camera loitering around the hotel for about 10 minutes before he opened fire. He appeared to be making a phone call as he walked down the sidewalk, just about 175 feet away from where Thompson was shot and killed. A firestorm erupted online as the manhunt for Thompson's killer was underway. Social media was flooded with users celebrating his murder, fueled by their own frustrations with the healthcare system. Instead of demanding justice for Thompson, Americans gloated in his death, pointing to how, as CEO, he earned just shy of $10 million in 2023, while 25 million people across the nation remained uninsured. The FBI and Crime Stoppers offered up to $60,000 in rewards for information leading to a break in the case. The New York Police Department received more than 400 tips during a 5-day manhunt for Thompson's killer. Police said at the time that only 30 of those anonymous reports provided any useful information about the gunman's identity or motive. It wasn't until a 911 call made by an employee at a McDonald's in small-town Pennsylvania came through that police were able to apprehend the suspect. Here we have photographs from Luigi Mangione's diaries, or his alleged diaries, that police have called a manifesto for his crime. There's a lot of handwritten evidence in this case. There are these alleged escape plans. Prosecutors are pointing to diary entries that they're calling a manifesto. We're going to talk about all of that. Luigi Mangione is a 27-year-old Ivy League graduate and heir of a prominent philanthropic Maryland family. The Mangiones are one of the most influential in the area, known for their vast real estate fortune and philanthropic endeavors. There has been deep analysis of his social media posts, including his Goodreads list, in an attempt to understand how a boy from a privileged upbringing in a Republican family became a radicalized individual with an apparent mistrust of the government. His posts demonstrated a dislike of corporate greed, but a fond affinity for venture capitalist Peter Thiel. He also wrote a positive review of the Unabomber's manifesto and promoted arguments against government welfare programs. But most telling of his writings are the handwritten notes that police found in Mangione's bag at the time of his arrest. His writings highlighted how the U.S. has the #1 most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet we rank roughly number 42 in life expectancy. Mangione wrote how UnitedHealthcare was the largest company in the U.S. by market cap, behind only Apple, Google, and Walmart, but questioned why the firm was continuously growing while the life expectancy of Americans was not. Although Mangione was never insured by UnitedHealthcare, his family's experience with the company seemingly influenced his outrage. The accused killer wrote in one document how his ill mother finally hit her $6,000 UnitedHealthcare deductible in October, but the doctor couldn't complete her tests and treatments until January when her deductible reset, meaning she once again had to fork out another $6,000. In his handwritten diaries, which prosecutors have described as being a manifesto, Mangione said the parasites in the healthcare industry had it coming. He detailed an attack on a healthcare executive, describing how if he carried one out, it would be targeted and precise and would not risk innocence. In his writing, he allegedly described going to a bean counter conference or investors meeting to kill a healthcare executive. What do? You whack the CEO at the annual parasitic bean counter convention. It's targeted, precise, and doesn't risk innocence, he allegedly wrote. Mangione also had a spiral notebook, much like this one, in which he toyed with the idea of using a bomb to kill Thompson, but he decided against the prospect because it would harm too many innocent people, and determined a shooting would be more targeted. Investigators claim he wrote a to-do list ahead of the grisly shooting, which included instructions to alter his appearance by changing his hat, shoes, and plucking his very distinct bushy eyebrows. Police found Luigi with a hastily drawn map of his escape route, which featured a line from Pittsburgh to Columbus, then down to Cincinnati. He reminded himself to check Pittsburgh for red-eye travel options, ideally to Columbus or Cincinnati. Prosecutors want the so-called manifesto presented to the jury because they believe it will establish motive, demonstrate intent, and prove Mangione was a revolutionary anarchist who believed he could usher a better healthcare system by killing the CEO. They will argue the writings in the notebook showed Luigi's disdain for health insurers and demonstrate clear ideas about killing a CEO at an investor conference. The prosecution also claimed that while Mangione's intentions were obvious by his alleged act, his alleged writings make those intentions explicit. Mangione's writings, which are coherent in nature, could also be used to prove premeditation and counter any potential defense claims of mental incompetence. The defense wants the backpack search excluded from evidence presented to the trial because they allege police didn't have a search warrant and lacked the grounds to justify a warrantless search. But the prosecution argues jurors should be allowed to hear about the backpack because its contents appear to directly link him to the killing. The firearm in the bag matched the one used to kill Thompson, and the writings in the notebook showed Mangione's disdain for health insurers and ideas about killing a CEO at an investor conference. Prosecutors also contend the search was legal and that police eventually obtained a warrant. A judge signed off on a search warrant for the bag just a few hours after the searches were completed. The warrant, the prosecution has argued, provided a legal mechanism for Altoona police to turn the evidence over to New York City detectives. Prosecutors are strongly arguing that Thompson's murder was a carefully premeditated and cold-blooded assassination. The federal charges against Mangione specifically highlight how he allegedly stalked Thompson ahead of the incident, suggesting the attack was planned, not a spontaneous act of violence. Prosecutors have extensively quoted Mangione's handwritten diaries, which they often refer to as his manifesto, during their pre-trial hearing arguments. They imply that these writings demonstrate motives. They argue, citing Mangione's own words, that he sought to bring about revolutionary change to the healthcare industry. If permitted to be presented as evidence in his trial, the prosecution will likely argue that Mangione lacked remorse over the killing, demonstrated by him calling the healthcare executive a greedy bastard in those writings. They will likely argue that the words delay, deny, and depose, found written in permanent marker on the ammunition used at the scene, indicate a planned attack related to his anger with the healthcare system. The prosecution could also argue that the use of a fake ID and planned escape route demonstrates Mangione's intent to flee and that he had a plan in place to evade police. Mangione has pleaded not guilty to state and federal murder charges. It's been over a year since Thompson was shot dead, and so far, there's been no trial date set. Mangione was in New York criminal court in December for pretrial hearings related to evidence in the case. At the heart of those hearings is whether or not the police search of Mangione's backpack was legal, and if the evidence contained in that bag can be admitted at trial. The defense has argued the seemingly critical evidence found in the bag should be excluded from trial because police searched without a warrant. Prosecutors claim a warrant signed off by a Pennsylvania judge hours after the search was completed is sufficient enough for authorities to turn that evidence over to New York City detectives investigating Thompson's murder. Mangione's lawyers are making a similar push to exclude the evidence from his federal case, where prosecutors are seeking the death penalty. Mangione faces two separate trials for Thompson's murder, one in state court and the other in federal. His state trial, if convicted, could see Mangione sentenced to life in prison, whereas prosecutors in the federal trial are seeking the death penalty. Mangione could also be acquitted or face a lesser conviction, such as manslaughter, if the jury is swayed in his favor or in the unlikely circumstance that key evidence is excluded from the trials. Some legal experts fear the trial could end in jury nullification, a process in which the accused is acquitted even though the evidence points to guilt, because the jurors believe the law that was broken is unjust, immoral, or wrongly applied. While this outcome is unlikely, jurors could use the process to send a message on the state of the U.S. healthcare system. And lastly, Prosecutors may also offer Mangione a plea bargain in an attempt to avoid a potentially controversial trial. He may be inclined to accept the deal to avoid the death penalty. It is too early to tell what defense strategy Mangione's attorneys will take should this case proceed to a full jury trial. If all the evidence the prosecution has presented, the surveillance footage, the manifesto, ballistics, and DNA, is permitted to be shown before the jury, Mangione's lawyers will be tasked with trying to get the jurors to question the validity of that evidence and whether Mangione is really Thompson's killer. Some legal analysts, however, believe that an insanity defense may be the only workable option and would protect Mangione from the death penalty. America has been deeply divided on Mangione's case and his alleged killing of Thompson, with some viewing him as a Robin Hood-like man of the people, while others consider him a cold-blooded murderer. Mangione has received hundreds of letters from fans across the nation and world, and his legal defense fund has raised more than $1.3 million. Supporters have flocked outside courthouses on the days he's meant to appear. That support stems from outrage at insurance companies and the American healthcare system as a whole, but also goes deeper than that. Some people have cited opposition to the death penalty as a reasoning for their support. Others have argued that Mangione's case is a textbook example of aggressive legal prosecution and political posturing. His critics view him as a dangerous ideological extremist, including Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, who has condemned the growing support for vigilante justice that was prompted by this case. Even Mangione's friends and family have been shocked by the case, with many claiming the man they knew is not violent, let alone a killer. As of this taping, Mangione's pre-trial evidentiary hearing has wrapped up, with a judge saying he plans to rule on what evidence prosecutors can include in the trial in May 2026. The New York judge's ruling will not impact the federal trial.